All righty, we are live. We're going to talk about the Big 12 and the games coming up this week and my predictions. And we're going to talk about the rankings, the new updated rankings today, as I always do. Okay, so what I like to do with the rankings is go with my most confident to least confident. My most confident is going to be Oklahoma at West Virginia. Now, I know West Virginia is considered a tough place to play on the road. Uh, Oklahoma has uh, has struggled from there. Uh, what their expectations, their normal expectations, they've struggled this year, but they are playing better now. They have a chance to have a winning conference record after this game, and I think they will. I do believe they're going to beat West Virginia. This is my most confident game, so I've got the biggest point spread here. I've got a pretty big point spread. West Virginia is struggling so mightily to me, and I know Oklahoma when they're playing good, they can put up some points. So I've got a 32-10 victory here, even though it's on the road in Morgantown. I think Oklahoma's going to handle West Virginia pretty easily. That's what I think will happen. All right, so our next game that I have the second most confidence in is going to be Kansas at Texas Tech University. Once again, I'm going with the road team here. I think Kansas will go to Lubbock, and I'm predicting a 30-21 victory. They've proven that even with their backup Jason Beam, that they're formidable, that they can absolutely score some points. And Texas Tech has quarterback issues. Who's going to be their guy? And whoever they have put out there has been struggling here lately anyway. They're really kind of highly touted redshirt freshman Baron Morton's struggled incredibly against Baylor, and they haven't played well since, really. So I'm predicting 30-21. I think Kansas will have the right amount of firepower, and I'm not really trusting. It's hard to trust any offense without a proven quarterback, and right now they seem to be kind of struggling. Tyler Shuck has come in and hasn't really lit it up. Donovan Smith, whenever he plays, is erratic. Baron Morton's might be hurt. I know he left that game, and but here in the last couple of games, maybe he got figured out or something. Maybe the adrenaline is gone. Maybe he's just not that guy. For all those reasons, if I can't trust the quarterback, then I can't really trust the offense, even though it is Texas Tech. So I'm doing 30-21. I think Kansas will pull out that victory. Let's see. Okay, we got a tie for 4-point spreads here. So I'll start with Oklahoma State and Iowa State. This is tough for me because of who I chose. This is tough for me. So I'm actually picking what will probably be an upset. Once again, I'm going with the road team here. I think Iowa State will pull this out. What makes it so difficult is not the fact that it's Iowa State, but the fact that it's Oklahoma State. It's hard to predict a team to lose a fourth game in a row, especially when it's Oklahoma State and you feel like they have talent. I know they're injured. I don't know how healthy they are now, but even on the road, I think Iowa State is just going to be desperate to salvage this season and not finish in last place and put something up there to be proud of as far as recruiting and to give the team a little bit of pride for this season. And I think they're going to do it. Oklahoma State is just struggling mightily right now. And as hard as it is for me to say, I think Iowa State pulls out this victory in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I've got a final score of 28-24. My next 4-point spread is going to be possibly an upset too. I haven't looked at the Vegas line, but I would assume that Kansas State is favored to win this game. But I'm going with my hometown Baylor Bears. Kansas State, I don't know. I feel like maybe their wheels are starting to kind of fall off, and I might be completely wrong. Kansas State can pull this game out, and it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me. See, I have a comment here. I just now noticed that. I do think Oklahoma State loses to Oklahoma regardless. Well, they're not playing this week, Scotty B. Iowa State is playing Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma is playing West Virginia this week. unless you're talking about Bedlam at the end of the year. So I'm at Baylor and Kansas State. I think Baylor, although they have question marks, it seems like they're starting to answer those question marks. Where is that vaunted defensive line that we've been talking about? Well, they're starting to show up now. And in the first 8 games, we had 0 interceptions. The last 2 games, we've had 8. Go figure. That's absolutely incredible, amazing. I give a lot of credit. Okay, I realize that. I'm in at the end of the year. Yeah, I was just doing a Week 11 preview of my predictions of the game. Um, but I think Baylor's defensive line is starting to show out. I'm giving them a little bit of credit for those 8 interceptions because they're rattling the quarterback, tipping balls. Especially yesterday, there was a couple of tip balls that turned into interceptions, I believe. And that part is starting to get answered. That was one of the question marks I think Baylor had this year. Another one was their passing game, the being able to rely on the receivers. Well, I think that's starting to take shape, and we're starting to see why Blake Shapen is a much better passing quarterback than Gary Bohannon. Luckily enough, our success has been predicated on being able to pass or run depending on the game plan. Like if it's too windy, we run, we're still successful. If it's if he got rattled against BYU and we had to run and that didn't work out for us, but we have won other games when we had to run. And that's kind of dangerous if we can win either way. If we can put them both together, that makes us pretty hard to stop, especially if our defense is improving like it looks like they finally are. A little bit like last year, how they seemed to we were winning all of our games, but it wasn't really until the last half of the year that our defense just took over games and nobody had a shot. Not even our biggest games, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss. We just took over those games. I am predicting a 4-point victory here. I think Kansas State comes into Baylor, and I'm finally picking a home team here. I'm giving a 31-27 prediction on that. Now, my last game that I had the least amount of confidence in, I actually predicted about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were halfway through the season, and I started to do the road to the Big 12 and who our contenders were. And I went through every single game and said, this is who I think will make it. Well, I'm already wrong because I had TCU and Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State, I'm not predicting to make it anymore. Every team with 3 losses in conference, I've got out. But TCU still has a shot. But in that prediction that I made, I had Texas beating TCU, and I'm going to stick with that. I'll get to that in a second. Let me finish this Texas TCU part, Scott. So TCU, they've struggled, and they've been behind, I believe, in their last 3 games, and by big points. That is absolutely playing with fire, and I don't think that's going to fly against Texas. Now, Texas' question in this is, can they maintain a first half lead if they do have one? They seem to take a big early lead in almost all their games and then struggle down the stretch and just give everybody fits. If you're a Longhorns fan, played out again yesterday. They held on to that victory when they were blowing Kansas State away. But I think they do. I think I trust Texas's offense more. I think the defenses for both sides are comparable, but TCU doesn't have the defensive line that Texas does, and Texas may have the better quarterback. Max Duggan has played really well, but not so much in the last 3 games, despite the fact that they are still undefeated. They're winning the games, but like just barely. And I think the wheels fall off this week in Austin, Texas. I think TCU is going to lose to Texas 28-27. Those are my predictions for for what I think will happen this week. So I have Iowa State winning on the road 28-24 over Oklahoma State. I've got Oklahoma winning big in Morgantown, West Virginia, 32-10. I have Kansas going on the road to Lubbock and winning 30-21. I have Baylor defeating Kansas State 31-27 and Texas beating TCU 28-27, a tight game. So let's look at this comment. It would be beneficial if the Baylor run game and passing game offensively could happen at the same time. Then it would be harder to stop. Yes, absolutely, man. If we get that sort of unpredictability on the defense, they're done. What I like, though, is if we get a lead, we're starting to dominating the run game. Once you have a dominant run game, there's really not much another team can do. They're going to lose 5, 6, 7 minutes off the clock and probably give up a score every time. And that's just unbeatable. If you can build a good to decent lead, passing and running, and you can get those explosive plays in the passing game, obviously, yeah, that makes it really tough, Scotty. Real tough. And then a good defense to back that up. And it looks like we're starting to have a good defense. I think Baylor is going to be on the rise a little bit. I think people were sleeping on them a little bit too much, but I had too much faith that Shapen and the receivers would come back. Another thing that has helped us in our last 3 games, we're 3-0. We got Khalil Keith back. And in the last 3 games, if I remember the stats correctly, we're averaging 267 rushing yards per game. Our leading rusher has had over 145 yards per game. And this is all with Khalil Keith back. I knew that was going to happen because I know he's a monster. We got Connor Galvin, who's a little more highly touted, but Khalil Keith is the real deal. He is a run blocker and a really good one. And it's showing out. And it's just going to make us hard to stop right now. And that turns out to help our defense as well. It keeps them fresh and off the field and ready to attack when it's their turn. We're going to be pretty hard to stop the rest of this season. Let's see how this plays out because I respect Kansas State and they could beat us, but that's what I'm seeing. Okay, so I didn't mention that I was going to talk about this, but I've got 4 teams that I think are vying for the Big 12 championship game. Okay, so we've got TCU, and I'm going to go through the last 3 opponents for these 4 teams: Texas, Baylor, Texas, and Kansas. I'm sorry, Texas Christian University, Baylor, Texas, and Kansas State University. So starting with Kansas State, they have to play Baylor, West Virginia, and Kansas. That's their road. They're in a tiebreaker battle with Baylor and Texas, because TCU literally has to lose all 3 games to not make the title game. They can lose to Baylor, they can lose to Texas, but if they beat Iowa State, they're still going to the Big 12 title game. That's TCU. So Kansas State is going to be pretty much locked into a tiebreaker battle, and it's going to be between Baylor, Texas, and Kansas State. Those are our 3 teams with only 2 losses in conference. And as I said, Kansas State has Baylor, West Virginia, and Kansas. Looking at this, you might say that's probably the easiest route, if they can win these games. Now going with Texas has a really tough road. They really do. I don't want to say quite as tough as Baylor's road, but we'll get to them in a second. Texas has to play TCU and then Kansas and then Baylor. We know Kansas isn't a pushover like they have been. And we know Kansas kind of had Texas' number a little bit, so that could play into it. Say like if even if Texas jumps out to an early lead and a big lead at halftime, let's say 14, maybe even 21 points, if Kansas creeps back and creeps back and creeps back, that might get into Texas's head. Like, they start to panic. I could see that as a possibility. So that I don't want to say that's an easy victory for Texas there. Don't know yet. And then they got Baylor to finish this off. Jumping to Baylor. Baylor's got to play Kansas State and TCU and Texas. So 3 of the top 4 teams, in my opinion, or depending on how you look at it, the top 3 teams in conference. So that's a very tough road. But man, doesn't it feel like somehow, some way that it's going to be TCU there, because TCU is not going to lose 3 games, their last 3 games. Then it feel like it's going to be Baylor versus Texas at the end of the year to determine which one of them gets to face TCU. That's what it looks like to me. I know I'm counting Kansas State out of there, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up there, but yeah, it's going to be one heck of a game, a very important game to see who gets to go to the Big 12 title game. That is the road left for top 4 teams that I think I honestly have a real shot. And now I'm going to jump to something else. Let's see here. Did I not put it up? Add a stream. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we want to look at the rankings here. And I'm just going to do Big 12 teams, but moving up 3 spots to number 4, according to the coaches poll. Excuse me, my voice is a little scratchy. Yeah, good old cigar will help that throat out, huh? Okay, so I looked at these rankings earlier, and looks like we only have 3 teams left in the Big 12, in the top 25, that is. So TCU jumps up 3 spots to number 4, still at 9-0. Who did they take over? Okay, they jumped. Oh, okay, they jumped Clemson, Alabama, and Tennessee, which all 3 lost. So that's why they go up 3 from 7 to 4. According to this, they would make the playoffs, but I don't feel like they're going to go undefeated. But so far, they've got the right path to get there. Again, this is just the coaches poll. I'm going to do the AP poll here in a minute. Is our next one Texas? Yeah, I think so. At number 18, we've got Texas. The Longhorns have entered this poll from unranked to 18th in the coaches poll. And then Kansas State drops all the way down 8 points from 14 to 22 in the coaches poll. And that's it. Just those 3 teams. So Baylor's on the cusp, I'm sure. I don't see the list of who just barely missed out, but I would assume Baylor's on the cusp with a 6-3 record and 4-2 and some impressive victories and no really bad losses. Well, I guess West Virginia is considered a bad loss, but that's where we are. Just 3 teams right now, and we'll jump to the AP. I don't think these changed that much, to be honest. TCU is still number 4 in the AP poll. Texas is still number 18 in the AP poll, and Kansas State is just dropped 1 from the coaches poll in this AP poll to 23, dropping 10 points this week. And I looked at the college football playoffs, but this has not been updated. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I think that doesn't happen until tomorrow night anyway. Or am I wrong? Am I wrong? Is it updated right now? It looks that way. Okay, yeah, I guess so. Okay, so guess what, TCU? You're in the playoffs. Y'all just need a super duper coronavirus to make sure nobody plays any more football this year until the playoffs. And you'll make it. We'll see how that works. Who else are we going to have in the Big 12 here? Texas would be 18th again, just like in both of the other polls. And Kansas State would be 23 in the college football playoff rankings. So still just 3 teams, and the same 3 teams, obviously, TCU, Texas, and Kansas State University. And I guess Baylor's obviously going to be on the outside of that, but it's not like they're going to make the playoffs. And neither is Kansas State with 3 losses, neither is Texas with 3 losses. Even if either one of them won out, nobody's getting there with a 10-3 potential record, assuming that they went undefeated and won the Big 12 title game. That's just not going to happen. But that's our rankings. Literally, the only team left that has a shot is TCU, and I highly doubt that they're going to win their last 3 games. And we will see. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they win them out. If they could win out and then lose the Big 12 title game and still not go to the playoffs. But for now, that's a great thing for them. Literally, they don't have to worry about what anybody else does above them or below them. And 2 teams above them are going to play each other, Ohio State and Michigan. So that gives them an even better shot, assuming that they win. That would more solidify them. And that's where we're at. That is what I had planned today, or for this video. Talked about my predictions for the Big 12 this week in Week 11. Talked about the path to the title game. Well, let's see here. Looks like Scotty B came back. I changed the screen, so I didn't see that I had any comments. Maybe TCU loses back-to-back games, but it's not likely. Yeah, I mean, I think TCU is struggling. I believe the last 3 weeks they've had to make comebacks, which I think is playing with fire. And Baylor and Texas are their next 2 games. Yeah, they could lose those games. They really could. And I don't know how likely or unlikely I would want to say that. It wouldn't shock me if they lost both of those games. It would shock me if they lost both of those games and then lost to Iowa State. They literally just have to win one game to make it to the Big 12 title game. And I'm positive they're going to win one game. They might win two, they might win three. Um, but yeah, they could, Scotty. You're right. They could. And I think, I don't know how unlikely I want to say that is with Baylor and Texas coming up. Actually, they play Texas first and then Baylor and then Iowa State. But that's where we're at. So talked about my predictions, talked about the paths of the Big 12 title game, and talked about the updated rankings in the AP and the coaches and the college football playoff rankings. So that is all I have for y'all tonight. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your night and have the rest what weekend is left. I hope y'all have an enjoyable one and love on your family. And I will talk to y'all later, but sick and bears.